Jamal Clinton.
All right, so we are going to head on into here. We had a small hiccup with getting one of our players into the feature match area on time, so we're going to dive in
Okay.
a couple of turns into this game. We've got Jim Davis up top here playing
Okay.
a ramp deck, it looks like. We've got some more landfall aggro on the bottom here with Dancy Pants.
Ramp in 2020? All right, I'm going to take a peek at Jim's deck here. Looks
Notably,
interesting.
notably playing Naya ramp, so while Jim is ramping, it looks like we are eschewing playing Uro.
Of course, of course.
We have a Nessian Wanderer there on the top of the screen. A Theros card, so been legal for a little bit, but not one that I've seen in Constructed here.
No, I haven't either.
Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, maybe a land from among them and put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. So kind of a card to consistently hit those land drops for you.
Makes sense when you're not playing Uro. Uro makes sure that you are hitting your land drops pretty consistently. You got to have some way to do that. Probably not Jim's number one choice of a card to play, but maybe just a little bit of a necessity here.
And if you're on Jim's side of the table, you got to feel a little bit rough about your pairing here. So we see not only one Gem Razor come down on turn 3 here in Dancy Pants, but we know they have another one in their hand. And Jim's playing a deck with Constellation cards in it, so there's a lot of enchantments on his side of the board.
Yeah, no kidding. That card is going to be fantastic here. Probably not. Yeah, not the matchup that Jim wanted to play against with his Constellation deck.
Yep. So
Oh yeah, and these type of effects too are not my favorite banishing light effects, just because there's so many Ugins running around. Gem Razor is not the most common, but that's still around too, and just leads to so many blowout effects.
Oh wow! So we see Omnath here. Dancy's deck is Dancy's deck is labeled as Gruul aggro, but it's got 4 Omnath in it, looking to be powered off of Lotus Cobra and some split lands here, interestingly.
Why not? Why not, right? I mean, yeah, these pathways definitely give you the chance to do it. It's like, if you're going to play some forests anyways, why not play the green-white pathway? You know, if you're going to play some mountains, why not play the red-white pathway? And play, arguably the best card in Standard, one of the best in the form of Omnath.
And something that's interesting too here is, there's been a lot of contention about Uro from myself and others, but we see this Omnath deck without Uro present in it here from our bottom player.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a product of week 1 Standard. People just want to try the new stuff. They want to try the fun stuff. And then as it goes on, people scale back and all of a sudden we're back at Sultai for Uro, I feel like formats always end with Sultai, but begin with something so new and different.
Yep. So we see a Great Horn in hand for our bottom player. Another one of those great mutate cards here.
Yeah.
That is not only going to find a land, but also going to trigger that Armored Killer's ability here, letting them destroy another Dryad.
Oh, that's so strong, right? Yeah, Jim has seen enough. Has seen enough here. One thing I really like about the Gruul list is the Auspicious Strix or Sterix. I think that card is really strong, and I don't think it necessarily had to be in these Simic mutate decks like we've seen them before. And another really cool interaction that I've seen is there's been the Scuttle Mob, I believe it's called.
Yep.
Where you make a landfall, you make a copy of it. If you mutate onto that, you're making 6/6s now instead of 1/1s.
Oh, okay.
Really
So
cool
it copies the entire card. Is sweet.
It sure does. Yep.
And we see on Jim's side of the board reaching for those Elspeth Conquers Deaths to bring in, which that doesn't have that downside that we see with Banishing Light, where if they kill Conqueror's Death, the thing's just permanently gone, right? So you don't care if they kill your enchantment as much afterwards.
Yeah, mutate decks are very, very vulnerable to those style of effects like Elspeth Conqueror's Death. Just a really clean answer. And that's actually one of the cards that I've identified early as just being one of the biggest kind of unban cards. It saw some play last standard, but I think it's very, very good right now. And maybe it's just very good because people are trying the big flashy things. But the Omnath decks I've been playing white for Elspeth Conquers Death and being more focused on that instead of the Genesis Ultimatum stuff. Maybe that's just to figure out if that kind of stuff is good. And then maybe the other style of deck is better, but they have been very strong for me.
Something I'm going to keep an eye on as we play these, as we watch the different feature matches here today, is these players have 20 lands and 23 lands respectively in their decks. They're just dedicated lands. And while 23 doesn't sound especially low, it is for a ramp deck, right? Like we saw ramp decks in previous seasons that were playing, upwards of 29 and 30 lands even. So we're, 33% less than we were before.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I mean, the Yorion style deck that I built last night with the double face cards, I had 41. I had 41 lands, and that feels more like 2020 mana bases.
Yep. So we see that Hellhound coming down here again. It's not quite step links, but similar.
Yeah, definitely similar. I tend to not necessarily love these type of creatures just because I feel like these landfall decks really struggle with having a good draw consistently, because not only do you have to have these early creatures, but you have to make sure your land is consistently coming in. And if you ever draw too much of one side, your deck ends up being pretty vulnerable. So yeah, it's interesting to see if these cards are going to be good, or if traditional Gruul decks, maybe like Taco was playing last round, are going to be better.
One thing I really like about Dancy's build with cards like these Hellhounds is that Dancy is playing these mutate cards, right? So these give you kind of cheap bodies to pair with those mutators, because remember, mutate keeps all the keywords on it, right? So if you mutate onto this, your Gem Razor has +2/+2 with landfall and a trample body, for example.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That is a very good point.
We have another new card that isn't flashy, but I think is super playable here on Dancy's side of the board in Fireblade Charger. So gets haste if it's equipped, and then notably, when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target.
Yeah. That's interesting. And like you were saying about the landfall ability being put onto these mutate cards, putting a Sterix with the ability, if it dies, deal 6, that seems awesome too. So some really cool synergies here from Dancy.
Yep. Mutate. I think Mutate, if you had me list my favorite Magic mechanics of all time, I think both Mutate and Adventure are pretty far up there. I know like those effects have been overshadowed a little bit by some of the other misses in the past year, but I do think that those are just quite excellent to see overall.
Yeah, I love Adventure too. That's one of my favorites.
I think at a super reductionist level, you can equate most mechanics to either some modification of kicker or flashback. And I think Adventure is like my favorite flashback variation, for lack of a better term.
Agreed. And I like the direction that they went in with those, trying to cut down on non-games. I feel like the more options players have, the less feel bad moments we have. And I think that's even more pushed in Zendikar Rising with these double face cards, and maybe pushed even to an extreme that were just, I even saw a Azorius control deck from someone that just had no lands. It was just all double face cards. I was like, oh, I guess we're Hearthstone now. Huh?
Yeah, I feel like the no lands is an extreme, but honestly, after playing these last few days, I kind of feel like I expect somewhere between like 15 and 20 lands to be the norm in a lot of these decks.
Okay.
I think you definitely need a critical mass of guaranteed untapped things, but you also don't want to flood as often.
Agreed. And I think for like ramp decks, and I think it's just the new normal is just going to be 50% of your deck can produce mana. When you play Uro, when you play Omnath, these cards that just take over a game by themselves, where the only way that you feel like you lose is when you don't have your third land, when you have a Cobra in play or something like that.
Well, I mean, even, we saw Blue-Black Rogues earlier today. It had 28 lands in it with the flip cards. It was on 16 lands and 12 cards that could be lands sometimes. So, And again, that consistency where even an aggressively slanted tempo deck can play a lot of lands to play Magic more often is just excellent to
Yep.
see.
Agreed. Agreed. Playing Magic is indeed excellent. I agree.
So we see here this Archon of Sun's Grace really kind of taking over the game on Jim's side of the
Yes.
board here. Just similar to the Nighthawk Scavenger that we saw out of the Rogues deck, speaking of, where this is an
Yep.
evasive threat that is also just adding a lot of pressure to the table.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I don't think um in standard like right now having Baneslayer in as this kind of effect is very good, but these style of cards, Archons of Sun Grace, the Scavenger, they fill that kind of role where if they go unchecked, if you're trying to attack them, you're usually not going to be too successful with it.
Yeah, flying and lifelink especially is just such a
Yep.
uniquely difficult combination to race for a lot of decks.
Agreed. Agreed.
And on DNC Pan's side of the table here, we see another Hellhound come off the top, and we're going to go ahead and pack it in. Really needed to hit the mana for that Gargoth to be in the game, I think.
Yep, 100%. And we just see Elspeth Conquers Death looking excellent. I bet Jim is going to be wishing he had a few more of those, just because these Gargaros, these Omnas, these Gem Razors, all of these are just such juicy targets for that card.
Yep. See Jim resubmitting pretty quickly there, happy with what he has going on. We see our girl player going back to the drawing board here a little bit, perhaps looking to be a little bit more aggressive when they're on the play.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think I like that. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing here too. When you have that deal 1 damage card, sorry, that name's escaping me, but up against Jim's deck where you essentially have no targets, do you want to keep a tapped mountain in your deck? But can you take it out because you factored that into your initial land count? So I think cards like that, you have to 100% consider spells when you're doing your mana because you want to have the option to be able to take them out.
Yep.
Yep.
We see a mulligan to 5 here for our green-red player.
Oof.
We've got a Lotus Cobra though, so that card does a lot for a little.
Yep. And I mean, here is just the situations where these Gruul Landfall decks are rough. They do not mulligan well because you need a critical mass of cards. You need a critical mass of lands and spells to make your deck function at the highest level. And when that doesn't happen, you play underpowered creatures for their cost.
So if you're on Dancy's side of the table, if Dancy hits an untapped land tier, their turn's going to be very explosive. And there's the land. So we get to see the land come into play, trigger landfall on the Brushfire Elemental. Then we get to Great Horn, mutate, get another land, trigger landfall again, and are we attacking for 7 here on turn 3?
Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, Great Horn with Brushfire Elemental is unbelievable.
That's a very good curve, and it's evasive like we talked about here too. And remember, this Great Horn triggers every time it mutates, so next turn we could see another Great Horn come down and then attack for 7 again.
Yeah, because it'll get double triggers. Think if we get a Fabled Passage off the top as well, then wow, we got a nice little 12-point attack coming in, just a lethal attack. No big deal.
Yep, just hoping. And this is the thing that's pretty powerful about these landfall decks is when you're in a position like this where you're like, well, if I draw a spell, spells are great, but if I draw a land, that's also a good draw.
Yeah, 100%. But if you draw Omnath, it's like, dang it. I can't cast it. Well, I guess with the Great Horn, it's pretty awkward with Cobra and Great. Oh no, never mind. I was thinking you get the land in combat. Never mind. I'm being silly.
So we're gonna see the Great Horn grab a couple of lands here again and attack for 7 again. That being said, this Conqueror's Death is looming on Jim's side of the board here, right? So Dancy Pants is kind of all in on this mutate target, and Doomblade's a coming.
Yeah, I wonder why we wouldn't Great Horn the other one, right?
Because they wanted to get 2 land triggers there. So remember, you get the extra mutate when you put it on the same one, but it is more all in here.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, but now we kind of see, like we saw from the Jeskai player last round, like you deal with that one real sticky thread, and it's not too much resources to back you up after that.
Yep.
Okay.
Wolf Willow Haven coming down. Did we maybe see... Oh, did we see a mistap on Jim's
Yeah,
side?
we tapped white with the temple,
Oh
so
no!
Arena's like, oh, I need to tap this for green. That's huge.
Oh, we wanted to get the Wolf Willow Haven in before we Conquer's Death, and now oh.
Yeah, that's rough. That is rough.
So we're one short now. I guess Jim can play the pathway and then play Wolf Willow Haven, and then Citizen Champion can block. So we're not dead on board, at least.
Yeah, so
Or we're not dead to a land off the top.
we get 2 land. Can we? I think we can even play more, right? We can, because that adds 2, so there'll be 1 floating. Then the Haven will add 2. We can play that plus champion and
Okay.
get 2 triggers. So that's not bad. It's definitely not as good as just ECDing here, but to be fair, that threat is not that big of a deal unless we get another mutate off the top, like a Strix or Sterix off the top is exactly what Dancy really, really wants here.
Yep.
All right, Jim did it right that time.
Okay. So we'll see.
Don't you want to play the champion here instead of the Cobra?
I think it's probably about a wash. You already played your other enchantment out, so
Yeah.
the champion can't block anyways. So you're just like hoping to fade the Sterix this turn, and then you can untap and Conquer's Death next turn.
Yeah. And I kind of thought the champion triggered itself, but it is not indeed an enchantment. They just help out enchantments.
You're thinking of Eidolon of Blossoms was the one that triggered itself. Yep.
All right, a land, not necessarily what the doctor ordered. I think one of these snakes is going to be happy to just jump in front. Oh wait, you can't.
Well, I'll say so. The land forces the champion to trade at least, so you're going to get to take Jim's card advantage away, and I think you're obligated to do that because remember that Great Horn is mutated onto a Brushfire Elemental, which has that evasive tech, so things with power 2 or less cannot block it. For those at home that didn't wondering why we're talking about that.
Yep, 100%. That is a nice evasive threat, and I like getting in there with the Hellhound as well, recognizing be like, I'll allow you to trade 2 Cobras here for this, and I think Jim's going to be happy with that as well.
Yep.
Yeah, Jim's like, okay, I'm just absolutely dead to cleave or anything. I think he's going to be super happy seeing this.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana on Jim's side of the table, 8 mana with the Lotus Cobra. So Jim does have enough mana to champion into Conqueror's Death here and draw another card.
Yep, as long as he doesn't mistap with these planes, I think this is a very nice turn.
Yep.
Bang.
So on Dancy's side of the board, we really don't have any super traditional reach, right? We've got, I guess Omnath is technically reach, huh? That card just like slices, it dices, it does everything you're looking to do.
Yep, but unfortunately it's not a good top deck. Oh, that was probably the best. I was going to say, unfortunately, Omnath is not a good top deck because we can't cast it, but that was by far the best. Okay.
So here's a jump. And the Dryad of the Grove on Jim's side here, these cantrip, remember, right? Like this Citizen Champion that's in play is going to turn all of these, just any enchantment into an above average draw for Jim.
Agreed. So now it's just putting the pressure on Dancy to have to top deck something huge each turn. You know, any mutate card is excellent because you get that Sterix trigger again. You know, Dancy has a lot of great draws, but there are also some that are not good. Any of the landfall creatures, Omnath is uncastable. So plenty of dead ones, but some really big hits as well.
We see Jim electing to put Birth on top of his deck, which seems great because that second champion's going to come back from Elspeth Conqueror's Death, so that Birth's going to draw 2 next turn in addition to grabbing a planes. Dancy's top of their deck has been very reasonable, but I don't know that it's going to be enough to overcome the card advantage that Jim is getting established here.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're seeing these very powerful cards coming off the top from Dancy, but the huge amount of synergy that Jim is. Wow, this is an attack. Yeah, the synergies have just been outweighing these just powerful creatures.
We see Jim here being like, all right, I've got my mana developed. I have all my colors with these Dryads. There's really no reason for me to keep this Lotus Cobra around.
Yeah. Interesting to not block with champion. This is open deckless, and there isn't a ton that Dancy can have.
If you block with the champion, you could be worried about a second Bone Crusher Giant killing your champion.
Yep.
I kind of like the conservative play from Jim here. I feel like if he has two champions in play, he probably just can't lose this game. Like, he's going to
Yeah.
hit enough enchantments on average. He's just going to snowball through his deck here.
Yeah, you're right. I think right now for Dancy, it is just another mutate or bust because you need that card that's going to generate multiple cards. And oh, hello.
How do you feel about
There's a good one.
sculpting the world, Corey?
I feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about it. That card is so powerful.
Yep. So makes a plant token for every basic land, notably that you have into play, and then landfall loads a plant up with 4/1/1 counters. So kind of a fixed Avenger Zendikar in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that is the kind of awkward thing. You don't need a ton of basics because you just really need like 2, 3 plants, but you're incentivized to not play basics with all these pathways. So it's a card that's kind of fighting with itself, I feel a little bit. But still insanely powerful if you can make it work.
So we see here blanks coming off the top of both decks for both Jim and Dancy Pants here, kind of just playing the waiting game, and the waiting game definitely favors Jim at this point. He's the one with two champions in play. The longer this game goes, the more likely he is to win. He's happy to hang out, I think.
Yep, no kidding. Jim doing some killer gardening here, killing with plants.
Gobble, gobble, gobble. Starting a second 8/9 there, it looks like. I like that. Get two pieces of pressure into play. Armored Killer, that the effect on that isn't super relevant, but remember, Sterix is going to get to trigger here when we mutate another thing onto it.
For coverage, Jeff, isn't it just your favorite to have cards that are now alternate arts, but also just have a different name? It's my favorite.
Yep.
It's just my favorite.
And my card lookup tool doesn't search the alternate names. I should probably like see if I can add the Godzilla names in there, because it's like, oh well, that card's Mothra. No, what's the actual name on it? No, that's Baby Godzilla. It's what?
Yeah, I am already a person that like on our podcast, me and Brad say the wrong card names constantly, but now we have 2 card names that I have to get wrong, just really helpful.
Well, in a way, you could. It's kind of helpful because there's 2 different names to get it right now with, right? So you're more likely to get it because you could say 2 different things and they're both technically correct.
That's a very good point. Too bad that all these Godzilla names are also like 5 words, you know?
Yep. Or there's like, you say Godzilla and you're like, which one? Is it the Mecha Godzilla? Is it the Baby Godzilla? Is it the Cycling Godzilla? Like,
Brad coming in chat, of course, to correct me on my grammar. That's a normal brother thing I get.
Looks like we might have hit a small technical difficulty with our top screen. That's fine. This game looks like it's almost over. I assume Jim's going to be closing this one out here momentarily.
Yep. Technical difficulties? Hey, I'm experienced in those. I got you.
So Corey and I were talking before the stream, and he said he takes all accountability for any technical difficulties. He's cursed, apparently.
No kidding. This last couple of weeks, it hasn't been great for me.
So we got Elder Gargoth here, maybe trying to drag Jim back into the game, or drag Dancy back into the game. But Jim's board is just so big at this point. The hope here, I think, if you're on Dancy's side, is obviously that attack's not great. They're probably hoping to hit another mutate card because going crazy with Sterix is like kind of their out.
Yeah, but even that, you're not competing with these plants. Like, it's really tough to come back when now everything Jim draws is going to be great. Land, enchantments, creatures, they're all relevant right now, and he set himself up quite nicely for that.
Yep, and Jim's board is not only taller than your board, but he's also wider than you too, right? So the hope with Sterix is that you can go wide, but Jim's kind of got you covered on that front as well.
Exactly, and there's just not anything right now from these Gruul decks without like Embercleave that has that really high ceiling and that reach to close out the game. But Jim definitely, the later the games go, are going to favor Jim because of these inevitable aspects that he has built in. But I mean, that is a cost. You know, these set saying champions and stuff, and these wanderers do not look good early on. So it is for sure a cost.
Yep. See that 8-9 coming across the board here. See Jim notably waiting to deploy his flyer until after Dancy decides whether or not they're blocking, because the Archon's now lethal since Dancy decided not to jump.
Yep. And there, Jim made a decision to not go for it and go all in to not get blown out by something. I like that. There's no reason to not play conservative here and just win eventually with these small ball attacks.
We see the spike field hazard myself there before our Dancy Pants decides to go ahead and pack it up and pack it in. All right, looks like our round is clipping along nicely. We've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got 8 matches outstanding, so we're gonna go ahead and just dive right on into our